Hello, everyone, and welcome and thank you for joining us today. My name is Jenna Quinn, and it's my pleasure as the Assistant Director of Alumni and Affinity Engagement to welcome you all to this edition of the 49er Industry Chat Series. Just so everyone is aware, the session is recorded. So, really, what that means for you is that this is going to be available to you on demand on our website at www.csulb.edu/alumni. So, feel free to watch it again, share it with a friend or a colleague, or really anyone you think might get something out of it. And so, with that, I'd love to introduce Matt Misetich. Hi, Matt.
Hi, that's my podcast voice. I'm sorry.
I like your podcast voice.
Oh, good.
I think it'll work today. Well, Matt, let me just read your bio so folks can learn a
Sure.
little bit about you before we get started.
Okay.
So currently a senior executive and partner at Pipeline Media Group, Matt oversees all divisions, including script, book, and film, as well as the management of pipeline artists and the implementation of future pipeline entities. He began his tenure with Pipeline in 2006, working as a reader until early 2008 when he took over as manager. In that time, he's helped launch the careers of several pipeline writers, including Evan Daugherty from Snow White and the Huntsman, Tripper Clancy of Stuber, and Crosby Selander of Bring Me Back, and others who have turned to Pipeline for guidance in their creative aspirations. He's based in Los Angeles, writes fiction sometimes, and is a partner in independent publisher Fringe Press. Matt, thank you so
Yeah,
much for taking the time today.
sure.
I think this will be a pretty good chat. And in
Yeah.
a very timely, like the writing and creativity and artists have been in the news very recently. So yeah, for
Yeah.
sure. Well, let's just get right into it.
Okay.
If you don't mind, could you share a little bit of background about yourself and your life and experiences and what led you to come to CSULB in the first place?
Uh, Gee, let me summarize the last that lead up period. I went to Long Beach State because I wanted to stay local. I went to San Pedro High School. Um, my 10th, I'll keep this quick, I swear, but it's gonna sound like I'm not. In 1981, no. My 10th grade teacher and other teachers and stuff in high school would tell me that my writing is good, which I guess it was okay, relatively speaking. And I knew I wanted to do something with film. I started to get interested in that. So Long Beach State made the most sense to go there for film and creative writing. Started in 1999, graduated in 2003. And I tell people I double majored. Technically I was like 6 credits short, but they don't know that. So I had to focus on a degree in film and electronic arts, which I think the degree has changed now. But film electronic arts with a focus on screenwriting and English creative writing, with 2 classes short of getting that degree. Um, so uh, so yeah, I can get into my how I got into film, which is actually directly tied to my experience at Cal State Long Beach, if you'd like me to
Yeah.
touch upon
No,
that.
please share a little bit about your student experience and what it was like for you at the beach.
So yeah, before I get to that, it's I didn't really join any clubs. I was, a commuter. I didn't stay on campus. I don't necessarily regret not staying on campus, but I did regret not joining more clubs and being more active, I guess socially, and like going to sporting events and things like that. I just didn't think it was important, and I would encourage the current students to kind of involve themselves in that sort of network, because it's going to carry over and you're going to keep more in contact, or at least the odds of keeping more in contact with alumni, I think is greater. And I didn't do that, and I wish I had. I really don't have any contact with alumni until until Adam Moore in the film department, started setting those sorts of things up and that kind of mechanism, which is great. Uh, so that would be my one little piece of advice. Uh, Otherwise, my experience there was great. I feel like the professors that we had at the time were excellent. I know some of the press professors now and gotten to meet some of the staff, at least for my department, for the film department, and uh, it's impressive how the campus has kind of put so much more of a focus on growth and expanding the different departments and just being so student focused. So yeah, my experience was great. I will say my first, I didn't know I wanted to work in development until I got an internship offer through one of the classes I was taking at Cal State Long Beach. Um, One of the current students, maybe she had just graduated, um, Karen Jarlstedt. Um, she's never going to listen to this, but just in case, uh, really kind of credit her for putting in a call for interns out. She was working as an assistant at a talent manager, who was whatever. But apparently, I was only one of like a few people to apply. Me and another student, Michelle Del Rio, who's a lawyer now in entertainment. Um, we got that internship, and I learned just a ton about Hollywood and the industry, and reading scripts and sending out actors uh, on auditions and that whole process. And that was just a huge learning experience because it was so stressful, and I've never had a more stressful job since. And I didn't even get paid for it. Uh, but that all started, and that made me realize that I wanted to go into development because that talent manager also worked with a lit manager, who asked me if I knew how to read scripts, and I said yes, and I of course lied. And so I went on the internet, and this was the olden days of the internet where there weren't a lot of like samples of script coverage and things, but I kind of self-taught myself overnight, read the script, gave notes. He's like, "Oh, you're really good at giving notes." And I'm like, "I'll just do this for the next 30 years." And now I'm here. But I've thought about it often. Like if I hadn't have taken that one class and hadn't gotten that opportunity, I would have definitely gone into some completely different career path. And um, in all humility, some of the writers that you mentioned in my bio, maybe they don't get discovered through Pipeline because of that whole domino effect, right? So it's been that's been an interesting little touchstone that I go back to often, is just finding those opportunities whenever you can in your college experience.
No, I mean that's a great reflection and honestly a true like
Oh,
statement.
there we
Oh,
go.
sorry about that. But
Okay.
no, that's honestly a great reflection and just a true testament to getting involved and taking those opportunities and seeking out those internship experiences. Um,
But yeah.
yeah, for sure. And so I'm curious though, you know, had you always been interested in scripts and were you a big reader? Like what made you think that
Right.
like this was in general, right? Because you came into to the beach, or maybe you didn't, or
Mhm.
knowing what you kind of a focus, like what was that aha moment that was like, this is what I want to do?
I did go into Long Beach State knowing that I wanted to work in film or writing. I don't know when that sort of turning point was, but I know that like going to see a movie, I would just be thinking about other stories that I wanted to invent in my own head. And there was a summer before my junior year of high school or senior year of high school. I read like 20 Stephen King books. And like I lost 50 pounds. Like it was just a huge like transformation. And I just remember thinking like after reading every book, uh, just picturing the movie in my head. I'm like, well, maybe that means I want to go into screenwriting. And for a time, I thought I wanted to be a professional screenwriter, and that just wasn't something I really wanted to do after a while. And so yeah, I knew I wanted to go into that sort of field. I also knew after a while of it came a little bit later after working for Pipeline and being a development exec and a freelance reader for a few years that I liked the whole idea of scouting for new talent, which seems weird because no one like aspires to be like the behind the scenes person, like plucking people from obscurity. Um, but I don't know. That was always interesting to me. It's kind of like the baseball scout mentality. I always wanted to be a baseball scout. And I never played baseball, so I would not be a good baseball scout. But like that whole dynamic was just really fascinating to me, and I'm still doing it. So I guess it stuck.
I guess it worked for you.
Yeah. So
Yeah. Well, and so I think you kind of touched on it a little bit, but maybe you could go into it a little more as far
uh,
as, after the beach and that career journey, getting you to Pipeline.
mhm.
After that internship and after the beach, right? Like how did you go about finding the next opportunity? What types of places did you look? What kind of leads did you follow up on? Like, what was that journey and how did you navigate it?
After that first internship, which was 2002, I had actually, I think, 5 or 6 internships. So from 2002 to 2005, which I was able to pull off, to be fair, because I was living here in LA and I was based here, so I didn't have the burden of paying for rent and that sort of thing. Um, but 3, 4 years of internships is a lot, free internships. But I did learn a lot about the type of material that's out there. Just a lot of script reading. I finally got hired as like a freelance reader for a production company. Um, I worked in distribution. That was my last internship, and then I was hired there. It was film TV distribution to uh, China and Japan, mostly Asian countries, uh, distributing, our US content to there and just kind of learning about that process. Applied for it was actually a data entry job for Script Pipeline, like updating the company database, like companies overseas, which was interesting in retrospect, and it was really boring during the actual process. But I, after that, I'm sorry, the notification keeps popping up that the audio is off, but I'm coming through clear, right?
Coming through
Okay.
clear?
Um, so yeah, and then I applied for a data entry position at Script Pipeline, ironically, even though I had this reading experience, but that was the open position. But I did a sample script and apparently did a good job on it. And then started freelance reading there for a couple years. Quit my distribution job and then took over like kind of the general management of Script Pipeline. And now the person who hired me is my business partner, and I haven't left. They've had to force me out of this job, I guess. So I haven't applied for a job in like 16 years. But which is nice if you can pull it off.
Oh yeah,
Um,
for sure.
but just to give you the very brief kind of like summary of the last 15 years, I guess. 2008 was the year that I started, and it was also the year that Evan Daugherty won Script Pipeline for screenwriting with a script called Shrapnel. Um, and that's the script we sent out, and we got a manager out of it. Went on meetings for a year or two. Uh, I got hired on a few studio writing assignments, so like it was really starting to snowball, and that's when the Snow White and the Snow White and the Huntsman sale happened. And not to be too hyperbolic, but that was kind of a little watershed moment for I think like this little sector of the industry, because it showed that screenwriters can like win a competition or a fellowship or something and actually lead to like this big spec sale. And it's still one of the biggest spec sales in the history of motion pictures, I think, from an unproduced writer, which was great. And that, obviously launched his career, and then a few other writers after that. And just kind of, it just sort of exponentially grew after that. And for better or worse, that was kind of like the moment where screenwriting competitions kind of became a thing and a way to break in. And that sort of mushroomed out into different platforms. The Blacklist platform now, Coverfly, and those sorts of things. So, and then we didn't have a big spec sale until 2020 during the pandemic, and that was when one of our finalists, we hooked him up with management. That happened really fast. They got the script out there, and it sold to Legendary for 2 million, which is another like unheard of number in this in the spec script world from again from unproduced writers. Um, and hopefully we're close to another one soon that I can't talk about. And jinx it if
Well,
I'm
well, it sounds exciting. I won't press you too hard on that one.
yeah,
But no, I mean that's incredible. It's almost like it's Snow White fairy tale kind of thing. It's almost like a
right,
fairy tale
yeah.
story in and of itself, right?
Oh, that's how I should have framed it when we did the press release 15 years ago.
Darn. Man,
Ah,
why
too late
wasn't I
now.
there 15 years ago? Well, I think I'm really curious as to, for folks who are looking to go into this field, into this development field,
Right,
there's often that picture of what you think the work is and what you think you'll be doing every day, and it's rarely aligned with what you actually do every day.
right.
Um, so, could you give us a little bit of a picture of what it what a day in the life looks like? What do you actually do? Because I know scripts is not the only thing that you guys do over there.
Yeah, we expanded over into books in 2014, and actually just a few years ago, started helping unpublished authors connect with lit agents and publishers, and that's actually gone really well. The same thing for up and coming directors and helping develop new work with them. Um, the trick is though, or like the twist here is that my specific job doesn't really exist anywhere else but like this company for the most part. As far as like my day-to-day sort of job. I'm not a development exec per se, even though we are developing new writers and new scripts constantly, new authors, and that sort of thing as well. Um, a development exec's day to day for a production company or a studio is going to be very, or at least a little bit different, or a lot different. But my day to day, honestly, half of my job is advertising and marketing. And that I sort of just self-taught myself over the last well, decade and a half now, 20 years. Uh, which I think is important though, because when you're a writer, whether you're going into development or you're going into production or even if you're a crew person, there you have to have those skills to market yourself, especially if you're a writer, marketing your own work and just kind of learning how to like best present your creative material. So that's actually kind of spilled over, and I could do a whole nother Zoom on like the importance of marketing, advertising, and like learning about that industry and how it'll help you creatively. But so that's well, a big part of my job because it is running a small business. Uh, a lot of script reading, a lot of working with writers and talking to writers every day through email or over Zoom, and just listening to new pitches and things like that. Uh, Again, our company is kind of singular in that respect. We tend to work long term with all of our finalists and all of our winners. It's just part of the deal when they place with us. Um, Other platforms do that as well, but I think we do it to an extent where it does kind of feel like a big part of my job is also being like in a development exec and also a manager in a way, almost like a pre-manager because we're helping those writers get repped. Uh, and then the rest of it's just HR and just going on Slack and listening to staff complain all day. Not complain, but just have questions and chat amongst themselves. Um, in addition to a million other things that I won't even we would be here all day. But when it is very much a entrepreneur mindset, small business mindset. Lots and lots of little moving parts that all kind of interact and fuel one another, if that makes sense. So it's really not unlike a lot of other industries. Same issues, same problems.
Yeah, for sure. No, thank you for that. Um, and you know, with what you do and with what the business is, is there are there any like things that you kind of go off of? I'm sure you see and meet with and hear hundreds and hundreds of pitches, right? And
Yeah.
and scripts and that kind of thing. It How do you know when you found someone or something that maybe has that whatever it is?
That's a good question. There is people talk about that little X factor in music a lot. They talk about it in acting, and it's everything, right? It's in sports, it's in writing, it's in, those are little intangibles that make someone stand out. Um, I still haven't quite figured out what those are, how to define it, but you know it when you see it. But I think the biggest through line to me is someone who feels different from the rest of the pack, right? Whether it's their writing ability or what the types of stories that they're telling, or I don't know, something that just feels like just diverse and different. Um, and the ones that have kind of found their own voice, found their own niche, and found their own style. Uh, it's like in fashion or like in like I said, like even in sports, like you can just kind of tell when you see it. So, but on a surface level, the biggest thing for us in finding like a really good writer is someone who understands the market and understands what type of stuff can actually get made. Uh, Same thing with publishing, like what type of book can actually like get published and has a universal appeal to it. Um, but that also is a whole other Zoom on like how to kind of refine that. But our biggest, I don't call it slant, but I guess our biggest sort of like it's almost a brand into itself at this point. The type of material that we look for, stuff that kind of pivots just a little bit from the norm, just enough so that someone stands out. So if someone's writing a horror script, it's not like, a haunted house thing and the family has to escape, maybe it's that, but there's like just enough of a little twist. Maybe it's really a story about domestic abuse and they threaded that commentary through there, or it's a story about there's a political commentary and they've Trojan horsed it into a horror script that has a little bit of a plot twist. Uh, Things like that, that's what's gonna stand out for us and also stand out for the industry because it makes the pitch a lot easier.
And is there any like advice that you can give to um anyone who's looking to kind of do something similar to what you do, right? Like what you do doesn't really exist anywhere else yet.
Yeah.
Um but like how do you refine that in you? Like how is it just years and years of hard work, or how do you get a sense of what that little thing is?
That is actually pretty simple. And my job does exist. It's like the person who runs Coverfly, I'm sure, is doing pretty similar stuff to what I'm doing, or the Blacklist website, where they're giving notes and reviewing material and stuff. Like it exists, but there's like five people that do it. But my advice would be, or not even advice, this is what you have to do. You just have to read a lot. You have to read a lot of scripts, a lot of I mean, the whole gamut, good scripts, bad scripts, produced scripts. Actually, don't read that many produced scripts. It's mostly just spec material that's out there. I Now that we're expanding into books, for example, uh, I'm just reading way, way more books than I ever read before, which was basically zero. But to understand the market, you have to know what the market is producing, right? So that's been really important. We just dipped over into comic books this year. We have a comic book category for Book Pipeline. We're accepting unpublished comics and hooking them up with publishers. We have some great publishers in our network now. But to do that, I had to get up to speed on what the comic book industry was really doing, which had been years since I was actively reading comics. So fortunately, comics are a lot faster to get through, and it's been great. It's just that there's that constant state of education that you're in, really. And I think that's the same in any industry, right? You're constantly having to update yourself and learn new things and learn what the current trends are and so forth. So yeah, that's been the biggest key to everything.
Well, I mean, it sounds like that might be something that takes up quite a bit of time, which kind of gets
Yes.
into my next question of, you know, what does work-life balance look like for you in your career?
Um, oh gosh, I'm the last person to ask about work-life balance. Um, I don't, there was a point, it was 2021 when we would just launched Pipeline Artists, which is our digital magazine platform, and Symposium, which are like educational platform that came after that, where I was working, uh, it was still kind of the remnants of the pandemic, so people were staying home anyway. But I was like kind of falling into that trap of working 10 or 12 hours a day and just staring at my computer and emails and so forth. Definitely not that bad anymore. My recommendation would be when you are sitting down at your computer or wherever you're working, make that time as efficient as possible and as focused as possible because it's going to go faster. And there's always going to be stuff to do. It's one of the things I learned from uh, Corinne Jarlstedt, who was in my first internship and a CSULV alum. She said when the first day I had that internship, she's like, "There's always something to do," and I'm like, "Maybe there's always something to do," and she's right. There's always something to do, no matter when you're caught up. But you have to kind of find that cutoff time because your efficiency is going to go. What do you call it? There's a reverse inverse relationship or whatever it is. Inevitably you're just going to be less efficient, and it's almost like you're not working at all, so don't even waste your time. So that's been the biggest thing for me, to make sure I go outside and proverbially touch grass and wave at clouds and all that. I just started going back to CSULV baseball and basketball games and bought season tickets now that I can afford them, even though they're super cheap. Everyone should go. uh
Thank you for the
and
plug.
yeah, yeah. Super cheap tickets. No one wants to go to those games now. Okay.
Everybody does. They're great.
Yes, they are. They are too. And like I'm always impressed with the turnout at baseball games, especially. But baseball, basketball. Anyway, I started going back to those, and it's good to kind of put your brain into different sort of environments because it works different parts, and you just don't want to get stuck doing the same thing over and over again. There's always different creative ways to approach what the task at hand might be, but giving yourself a break and going to networking events and things like that. Strangely, also a plug for Long Beach State. Not to make this a big Long Beach State fan Zoom, but uh, I was talking to a new manager I was introduced to a month or so ago, lit manager. Um, and for some reason we were talking about baseball. And he's like, "Oh, I've always wanted to go to a Long Beach State baseball game because I heard that field was really good." I'm like, "I happen to have just bought season tickets a week ago, which is the most random thing that someone would want to go to a Long Beach State game with me, who didn't go to, Long Beach." So now I have a meeting next month that we're going to the game, and you know, so you never
That's
know.
awesome.
Yeah, you never know what those little opportunities, that little side things, almost like a hobby, just going to, college sporting events, how that could act as almost a networking opportunity. Um,
Yeah. So
and it's
networking opportunities, they're out there. Take
oh yeah,
advantage.
sure. I can't afford a suite at Dodger Stadium or like the Coliseum or something to entertain clients and entertain industry people. Uh, But the first row at Blair Field on a Saturday, can swing that. Uh,
I love that. That's awesome. No, I'm
yeah,
glad. And oh, hey, we'll see you out there, man.
sure.
Well, so, um, yeah. So back to the job, right?
Let's just talk about baseball.
Let's just talk about baseball. Um, but yeah, I mean, what would you say? I have a kind of a two-parter question,
Okay.
and so the first being, what would you say is the most challenging part of your job?
Trying to juggle and find the time for all the stuff that you have to theoretically do, in a given day or a given week. Um, prioritizing isn't hard. It's the what do I start with? Because they're all of equal importance. So it always ends up being like, well, the marketing advertising thing has to get done first, and then also I have 20 scripts that we have to read, and let me siphon it off to certain readers and get their thoughts first. And there's all these. I literally have 75. I think I have an exact count. I think it's 78 books that I've bought over the last year of authors I met at conferences and things. I'm like, oh, I'll buy your book, and then it just kind of sits very neatly on my shelf and spine shelves and what I got behind me here. Uh, and it just becomes overwhelming at some point. So you really have to compartmentalize, which I feel like I'm gotten pretty good at over the years. See, playing golf to that, strangely. Um, but compartmentalizing, you know, not worrying about all the other stuff and all that other noise, just like again, focusing on the task at hand. And once that's like done or caught up on, then you move on to the next thing and the next thing rather than trying to multitask. There's really no such thing as multitasking. Like you're doing one thing at a time, right? On that note too, really quick, because I think about this every day or every week, and it's just insane to me. I remember reading an interview in LA Magazine about I forget what media exec it was, but they were talking about how like, yeah, sometimes I'll have a Bluetooth on, I'll be on a Zoom, I'll be on 3 different calls at once. And I'm like, what kind of a sociopath are
Yeah.
you? Like that's not possible to have 100% of a focus on multiple things at once. So dispel the multitasking myth, just prioritize and focus and compartmentalize. And again, totally applies to every single industry. Um,
Yeah,
that's
absolutely.
been most helpful.
Absolutely. Well, then, and then the second part of the question
Okay.
is, what do you find most rewarding about your job?
Oh, that one's easy too. Going back to the scouting aspect, when you hook up a writer with a manager or a rep, or something big happens, like they sell a spec or they get their film produced, they come back and they're like, "You guys are the reason that I'm like here." Uh, that's great, right? I think that's a better feeling than actually having the success yourself, personally, even though um, monetarily we're not making anything off of it, but there's something satisfying because it just proves that what you're doing in that process actually works. So,
Yeah. No, that's great. I mean, and touching on that, right? Like for yourself,
mhm.
in your bio, you say that you write fiction sometimes.
Right.
Are there any projects of yours that you are working on?
Well, I started fiction writing before I went to Long Beach State, and I thought that was going to be like part of my, career path. And I just put it aside for a number of years, and then 2022, uh, we connected with the team at NaNoWriMo, which is great. It happens every November, but there's other programs and stuff during the year, which is National Novel Writing Month. And November, I don't think you're aware of this, Jenna, so I can explain it to you too.
Yeah, please do.
NaNoWriMo is every November, the goal is to write 50,000 words or like basically a full novel in a month. And it's just like a challenge, and there's like, it's a community aspect, and it's been around for 25, 30 years now almost. Maybe not that long, but a long time. And super popular, like a million authors join it every year. So I'm like, let me try doing NaNoWriMo this month. And I did it, and I finished a book. And I'm like, oh, I actually like doing this. Um, and so I kind of went back to that the last year and a half or so. Uh, so we'll see how that. It's a very unmarketable little lit fiction novel. So I'm not planning my retirement soon, uh, but yeah, that goes back to kind of like the work-life balance thing.
Mm, yeah, for
Even though
sure.
that's work, that's part of like the other end of the scale.
Yeah. Well, and I bet it enables you to be a lot more empathetic to the folks that you're working with, right?
Oh
Like
yeah.
being able to know, kind of what they're going through because you do it yourself.
That's a great point too that I should have mentioned before. It's like you have to read a bunch of scripts, but I think putting yourself like in that position, because I've written 10 or 12 scripts over the course of like that span when I was thinking about being a screenwriter. Without that, like, you really can't empathize with that writer's plight, basically. Not to mention like all the little creative facets of it of writing a story and all that. Uh so yeah, it's helped a ton. And going back into publishing and catching up on books and meeting new lit agents and going to conferences and all that, I think now that I mentioned it, I haven't even thought about it. But like that probably helped my decision to go back to fiction writing because I probably missed it. So
Well, just discovering all kinds of things in this industry chat here today.
it's a great therapy session for me. I don't know about you.
Well, I'm certainly enjoying it.
Good.
So Another thing that we love to ask about is mentorship and networking. I know that you kind of
Sure.
touched on networking a bit already, but how important is mentoring and networking in your field?
Mentoring or being mentored?
Either one. And then,
Okay.
also like, do you have any mentors? Do you have any mentees?
No, I don't know if I have mentees. I feel like that's such an elitist thing to say. Like we have like a circle and I'm wearing a robe or something. Um, I don't know if I guess I mean, I'm helping a bunch of writers develop scripts, and our team is. So I guess in a way, that's mentoring, giving them career advice and all that. There's no formal like they don't call me their mentor, and I don't call them the mentee. Um, but sure, I guess that relationship kind of inherently exists with what we do. I never really had any mentors. Strangely, no one saw the value of taking me under their wing, I guess. Uh, but that does exist. It exists a lot in like the TV writing space, it feels like. Because TV is when you're writing for TV, it's so collaborative. The whole thing's collaborative, but it's so much more like hands-on. You're working in rooms and staff writing, and you have showrunner positions, and that whole hierarchy is unique, I think, in a sense. So I do know a lot of TV writers that have like a mentor who was a showrunner or who was a head staff writer or whatever. But it's probably not as common as it should be. And probably not as common as it should be in publishing either. It should be a little bit more common. Um, but I do see a lot of established authors, there's a lot of established screenwriters uh, essentially take on what I would call mentees. How to get that sort of relationship, I have no idea. Uh, I really don't. I mean, I wish there was some specific path to it, but again, I think it just boils down to making legitimate organic relationships, not going out and searching for like how can this person help me, but just being open and giving off the vibe of like I want to learn more, um, and then you'll be shocked at how many people are like, oh, I can't wait to tell you what I know, because everyone wants to talk about what they know, right? So I think that's how a lot of them end up working out.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I mean, honestly, sounds more like, maybe networking is really where it's at for you guys or for this field.
It's networking without the intent of networking, if that makes
Mm,
sense. You know, like going to a networking event is obviously like you're there to network, but like I guess it's a fine line. We should just do a whole series. Let's do a whole podcast series live from Blair Field where we talk about all this stuff. Uh but it is a fine line in that you can always tell at like an event or a conference or something, the people who are like just there to meet other people and see what they can do for them rather than just like meeting new people.
mm.
Um, and that there's an X factor to that, I think, on its own too. Like I can't really describe how that vibe is given off, but like try to avoid that. Just like go and be open and just meet people for the sake of meeting people. And that's like the best way to sort of network, quote unquote.
I kind of feel like what I'm hearing is like be au- authenticity, right? Like just
Just be a
be
regular
yourself.
person.
Just be
Like,
just be normal.
yeah, just please be normal.
I
Uh,
feel like it's that meme where it's like be normal, but then all of a sudden you forget everything about how to be normal, and then you're just
right. Holding drink cups upside down. And yeah, you know. Uh, just be normal, but I guess normal is like someone's gonna complain. It's like, what about people who are abnormal? It's like, all right, fine. But be yourself, I
be
think is
yourself.
which is like the most 80s poster like advice.
Hey, let's not get mad
But
at the 80s because they had it right, right?
that's that's true. I don't know if you're not a child of the 80s, but you know, it's very optimistic and encouraging. But it's true that there's timeless advice to be said over the last 100 years of tropes.
For
Um,
sure. For sure.
and that's super important when you go to any sort of event, any sort of like meeting. You really have to just like settle down and just be your authentic, voice,
Yeah.
basically.
Awesome. No, great advice.
Yeah.
Um, Well, something that wasn't around in the 80s, notice a
Hmm.
great transition here, is AI.
AI? Oh,
AI.
how did I predict where you were going?
You might maybe put into an AI chatbot, who knows?
Right, great
But
segue.
thank you so much. But yeah, I wanted to ask you, AI is something that is a hot button issue in across many industries, and
Right.
particularly in the writing industry and the
Yeah.
scripts, books, publishing, all that. It's incredibly um,
Hmm.
salient. So, you know, what are your thoughts on the rise of AI?
Well, I'll make it brief.
Okay.
AI is not going to replace a writer, even though many writers will listen to me say that and say, "Ah, how dare you?" Yes, they are, and like we have to have protections, and yeah, yeah, you do have to have protections. That's what the WGA fought for, and they were right to fight for in this, strike cycle. Uh, but I just don't. It's not there yet, and I don't think it will ever quite replicate what the human mind can do in terms of storytelling and nuance and all that. It might be able to come up with like good concepts and good ideas, and but so can we. Like I can come up with five decent concepts right now. It's really not that hard where you need a machine. It's all about the execution at the end of the day anyway. And uh eventually will a machine or will a computer be able to replicate a really great Oscar winning type script? Maybe, but when we get to that point, I'm far less worried about the arts, honestly, as much as I care about the arts. Far less worried about the arts and more worried about how it can be applied militarily, right? So once we get to that point, I would the robots will have taken over. So like, who cares about your screenwriting job? There's my bleak but very honest answer to
No.
AI. Uh, it, they just had this argument. Uh, this is a timeless Zoom, so I'm going to keep it timeless. But this week, and this will be a constant conversation for the next 10 years anyway. Um, about using AI arts when like pitching a script or using it in a pitch deck or something. Um, because they're saying like, well, it's putting graphic designers like out of work. And look, it is possibly, but like writers have been stealing images off the internet to use for their pitch decks and their little script posters and stuff anyway for many, many years now. So like, what's the difference, right? If you're not going to pay for something, you're not going to pay for it. So there's that side of things too. Like, uh, are you going to use it unethically, and are you going to use it unethically when you were already doing like theoretically unethical stuff to begin with? So there's little things like that too that are going to pop up. Um, Grammarly is technically AI. It checks your grammar and sentence structure and things. Isn't that why is that not being debated? Should it be debated? I don't think so, because it's taking the non-creative stuff almost out of the equation in a way. Um, Although you can make an argument that it is creative in how you structure a sentence stuff. So I don't know. It's all a big question mark. I will say, what will I say? How do I keep this short, Jenna?
I know it's so
I don't
hard when it's such a big issue and such a complex
Well,
issue.
there's like I said, like with the art and using that, it's in pitch decks and stuff. Like that's not really giving you a huge advantage. No one cares about the poster for your script that hasn't been produced yet. If your film gets made and you use an AI generated poster instead of hiring a graphic designer, uh, I mean that's what you did. It's not really. I don't know if that's super unethical. I wouldn't do it personally because the AI art stinks, and I want something very specific, and I want to work with a human being on it. Then I'm going to pay a fair but not really that expensive rate to. Um, that's my, personal approach to it. But there's all these little different components of how AI can be applied to the arts. Um, when it comes to writing, when it comes to filmmaking, when it comes to publishing. And I think it's good for creatives to learn what type of stuff is out there currently and where it's going and how to apply it on an ethical level. Um, or how to like not apply it and kind of push against it. I'll leave you with this and button up the AI conversation. Um, it's only going to work if audiences accept it. So if a studio one day makes a complete like AI generated sci-fi movie or something, and audiences go and buy tickets and watch it and love it, then they're going to make another one and another one, right? If audiences say this stinks, we don't want this, what are you doing? Then they're not. Like that's how simple it is. So like we kind of control our own destiny in a sense. Um, they're not just going to like do something for the sake of doing it, right? So I think the fear is a little in our control,
Interesting.
I
Okay,
suppose.
for sure, for sure. Well,
So
thank
many
you.
writers would disagree with me on this, but
No, no, and
again,
I get it. I think it's one of those topics that are just it's so big. So thank you so much for
well,
sharing your.
and just to add too, like you mentioned before, like other industries are completely different, right? They're like, holy crap, AI is like helping me write emails. It's helping me draft, responses. It's helping, I don't know if lawyers aren't using it, but like yet, but
Yet.
maybe drafting, a what do you call them that lawyers do? My wife's a
A,
lawyer. I
a
should know
case brief.
everything about this. Yeah, but uh, I don't know. So I don't know if it's going to help or hurt, and where that sort of line should be drawn.
Yeah, but we'll figure it out.
Yeah, well, maybe. I'm not going to figure it out. I'll leave that to the others. I'm not a big fan of it in a nutshell,
Gotcha.
as
Okay.
far as what we do. So
Gotcha. Well, so as speaking about what you do,
yeah.
you know, what's what's next? What's on the horizon? Where are you guys going?
Well, on the screenwriting end, we have a few writers whose projects were kind of put on pause during during the strike, obviously the pandemic.
I know.
Felt like a pandemic. Uh, so those are getting kind of rebooted right now, and a few projects have a big director, a big actress attached to it, so they're going to go out soon, and pretty optimistic and hopeful that they're going to uh, they're going to get picked up by someone, and we'll be able to announce it soonish. A few other writers working on new stuff with their reps. So the film and TV industry is a little, you keep hearing that word contraction, especially when it comes to TV. From my vantage point, there is going to be that slimming down in TV shows, and because there was just too much before. But it's not going to be as bad as people seem to think it is. Every single person out there wants like a great horror script, a great elevated, meaty drama for an actor or an actress, right? So uh, none of that's going away. We all want to watch TV shows at the end of the day, literally at the end of every day, right? So yeah, I don't think it's gonna be as bad as people think. So on the publishing end, we have a few authors that are, I think, signing with lit agents this month. They're kind of deciding still, but lit agents that we helped hook them up with from our last season. So that'll be great. Both of those books of theirs are fantastic. So hoping to keep that moving. And then a short film director that won our last film pipeline season is adapting a book right now that we're helping her develop, that I really, really love. So hopefully we can help there and something will happen. Lots of little development-ish pre anything fires in the irons in the fire. So that's always kind of cool.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, I hope that when they do come to fruition that you'll be able to share it with us and keep us in the loop.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah, of course. Uh, and of course the Big West tournament again next week. Can't wait.
Yeah, for sure, for
So
sure. Can't wait for that.
yeah,
Which clients are you going to take the to that one?
no one wants to go to that. It's hard to find like basketball fans just to go to a game. It's hard in LA to get people out of the house, period, right? The challenges in that, I'm sure.
For sure.
So I'll be going solo to Henderson, but yeah, see what happens. Uh,
Awesome. Well, I always like to ask this one ending question
sure.
to everyone that does these 49 industry chats, which is
Uh,
um if you had a time machine and you could go back in time and talk to yourself
okay.
and give yourself one piece of advice when you were about to graduate,
Right.
about to leave the beach, what would you tell yourself?
Buy Netflix stock. I know that's not the point of the question, but that's what I would tell myself. What else would I tell them? And bet on the Patriots for every Super Bowl, um, except when they play the Giants. No, I would probably, I would probably have wished I, again, like I said, went to more events, went to more social gatherings. I feel like there weren't that many back then as there are now that the beach kind of hosts. But maybe there were, and I just wasn't paying attention. So I would have said, make more connections, kept in contact with more, alumni friends. Otherwise, I don't know. I did pretty much everything that I wanted to. Not to brag. No, it's you never know what's going to work out and what's not going to work out. You just kind of have to let the river sort of flow in a sense, and you just end up where you end up. There's so many different ways to kind of like reach that whatever pinnacle it is, and you don't even know what the pinnacle might be. So just kind of go where the opportunities take you and the little streams that you want to go down. How's that for an analogy?
Works for me.
Oh,
Thank
good.
you.
Thank God.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Matt, so much for your time. For those of
Sure.
you who have tuned in, thank you so much for joining us as well. If you want to see this again, this will be on our website at www.csulb.edu/alumni for you to share out with whoever. And also feel free to follow us at CSULB Alumni so that way you can keep in contact with us, see what we're doing, make sure you don't miss the next 49er industry chat, or the next event that we're doing, and or the next game we're at, right?
Right.
um,
Yeah.
but Matt, if folks wanted to get in touch with you, and maybe continue the conversation or ask you any questions, how might they
Yeah.
be able to reach out to you?
Uh, they can always email me direct at mjm at Pipeline Media Group .com/org. No, there's no slash org. Obviously .com. And if you want to at me on Twitter/X, that's fine. But I feel like everyone's left that site except for like the screenwriting community. So and
Awesome.
I'm on LinkedIn too. If you want to just contact me there too. I check everything every day. That's the one thing I'm lacking in the compartmentalization is the social media messaging slash posting distractions.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Matt. And we certainly appreciate your time. And for everyone
Good.
else, thanks so much for joining us. And we'll see you next time. Bye.
All right. Thank you.